Hi YouTube, my name is Jack, and today we are going to talk about the Wheel of the Year. There is a critique of the Wheel of the Year that you will find in a lot of online spaces these days, that the Wheel of the Year is kind of out of touch. So there are 8 primary holidays on the Wheel of the Year. You'll see these in most of Wicca and also in just a lot of general introductory books on paganism. These holidays are the solstices, the equinoxes, and then roughly speaking, the halfway points in between them. So the first day of or the night before February, May, August, and November. And there is a critique that you get a lot these days that the Wheel of the Year is just out of touch and it doesn't fit with a lot of pagan practice. And this is for a couple of reasons. One is pagans live all over the world and the seasons change depending on the climate that you're in. So if you live in Los Angeles, you do not experience the same set of seasons that was experienced by the people who came up with the Wheel of the Year in England in the 1930s through 50s. And so there's this feeling that, like, why would I celebrate these 8 holidays that were designed for a particular seasonal climate when my seasonal climate is different, right? Maybe my seasons are, the rainy season and the dry season, or whatever. But like, I don't have a distinct spring, summer, fall, and winter. So why would I follow a ritual year built around those things? That is one part of the critique that is made. The other part of the critique that's made is that the Wheel of the Year feels kind of rote and formulaic, out of touch, uninspired. So, right, like Samhain, which is coming up, is the holiday of the dead, and we do dead people things, and we venerate our ancestors. And then Yule is the rebirth of the sun, and we, hang mistletoe and holly, and we sing Christmas carols and make them slightly pagan, and it feels, I think a lot of people feel very boxed in by the Wheel of the Year. Like there are specific things that they have to do that don't necessarily fit or make sense with their practice. The 2 really big examples of this are the holidays most people know as Imbolc and either Lammas or Lunasa, because a lot of the time the recommendations that you'll see for observing those holidays in particular pull from Irish sources. And so Imbolc is a time that a lot of people are, if you're reading general pagan books, you'll be told that this is a holiday sacred to the goddess Breed, and therefore you need to make Breed's crosses, and you need to honor this particular Irish goddess, even if the rest of your practice isn't Irish or has nothing to do with that particular goddess. Same thing at Lammas. A lot of people will say, this was the sacred holiday of the god Lu, and so therefore you have to do things associated with Lu. And I think a lot of people see that information and feel rightly confined and boxed in by it, and like it just doesn't make sense and it doesn't fit for them. And so out of these things comes the idea that the Wheel of the Year is static and kind of needs to be done away with. You see a lot of people saying, well, I'm gonna get rid of the Wheel of the Year and I'm gonna invent my own holidays. There's also sort of this additional thread, depending on which corners of the internet you inhabit, where some people will say that the Wheel of the Year is culturally appropriative because the greater Sabbats are often referred to by Irish names. So names like Lammas, or not Lammas, Lunasa, or Imbolc, right? We will come back to that point, because anyone who knows me knows that I do not think Wicca is remotely Celtic. I think that criticism is all legitimate and fair, but it also kind of misses the point of the Wheel of the Year. And that's hard. There are a couple of books on the Wheel of the Year that are very good and that do a very good job of really kind of exposing an attitude to the Wheel of the Year that I think is the right one. But there's a lot of books on the Wheel of the Year that really just have this kind of cookie cutter approach, where they say like, okay, at midsummer you're going to do X, Y, and Z because there was some historical precedent that at midsummer people would take baths on St. John's Eve. So you have to go take a bath or jump over a bonfire. And and it feels very kind of matchy-matchy and forced and inorganic or inauthentic. And so I think that criticism is legit, but I also think it misses the point of the Wheel of the Year. So let's talk about the Wheel of the Year and what the purpose of the Wheel of the Year is. This is a lot of Jack Chanek's personal opinions. I am not speaking here as an authority on all of Wicca, because Wicca is deeply personal, and like people are going to get out of it what they put into it. So like everyone's going to have different perspectives on the Wheel of the Year. Speaking for myself, historically, we know that originally the Wheel of the Year consisted of only 4 festivals. The people who sort of put together the New Forest Coven that Gerald Gardner was subsequently initiated into were strongly inspired by Margaret Murray, and Margaret Murray had written that the witch cult had 4 main Sabbats, 4 holidays, which were February Eve, May Eve, August Eve, and November Eve. These holidays were referred to by the month that they immediately preceded, so February Eve is the night before February. They were not referred to by Irish names. So, in the early days of Wicca, the names like Imbolc and Samhain and Lunasa, no one was using those. Those names really come into popular usage in the wider Wiccan community with the publication of 8 Sabbats for Witches by Janet and Stuart Farrer. And the reason that Janet and Stuart Farrer used those names in 8 Sabbats for Witches is that they were living in Ireland at the time. And so they were incorporating a lot of sort of Irish pagan heritage and Irish folklore into the work that their coven was doing. And they say explicitly in 8 Sabbats for Witches, like, use names for these Sabbats that are appropriate to the place that you were living, or whatever. But they published this book, and everyone started calling these holidays Samhain and Imbolc, and now we're kind of stuck with it. I personally try to avoid those names as much as possible, just because my practice is not Irish. Nothing about my Wicca looks remotely Irish. And so it doesn't make sense to me to use Irish names for our holidays. So sometimes in public spaces, I will use those names just so that people are conversant and understand what I'm talking about. But I would much rather refer to these holidays either as like the Eves, right, February Eve, or using appropriate names from like the folk Christian calendar that was more influential on the development of the Wheel of the Year. So, right, February Eve is Candlemas. I'm comfortable calling that Sabbath Candlemas. I am more comfortable saying Candlemas than I am saying Imbolc. August Eve is Lammas. I am more comfortable saying Lammas than I am saying Lunasa. That's just me. That's just like a personal Jack thing. But by and large, I only ever use those Irish names for the Sabbats if I am in a public context and I want to just default to terminology that I know other people will recognize. If I'm speaking privately or like with my own people, I don't use those terms. Anyway, that was a slight digression. So we have these 4 Sabbats that we know were kind of the original blueprint for seasonal holidays in Wicca. And then in the 1950s, once Gardner has gone public, once Wicca proper like really has become a thing, they add in the solstices and the equinoxes. Part of this is because people just liked holidays and wanted more of them. Part of this is because of sort of the idea that the sun and the sort of motion of the sun should be really important in a pagan religion. And then part of it is also because Gardner was close friends with Ross Nichols, the founder of the Order of Bards, Ovates, and Druids, and they were sort of collaborating and building a ritual calendar together. And they came up with an idea of having 8 Sabbats altogether. And I think a really important thing to understand about the Wheel of the Year as it emerges in Initiatory Wicca is that it emerges in Initiatory Wicca. The Wheel of the Year in Gardnerian Wicca, and then in subsequent other traditional forms of Wicca, is a means for initiates of a particular tradition to connect to their gods according to a ritual structure, a mythology, and oral lore that is specific to their tradition. So you're going to have something that looks very different in an initiatory context than in like the books that you pick up on, Paganism 101. And there's a tremendous amount of variation between covens, and that's not to say that every coven is doing the exact same thing, but the point is that every coven in an initiatory Wiccan context is conducting the Wheel of the Year in an initiatory Wiccan context. And while that might mean different things to different people, there is a layer of meaning there that gets lost when you try to put that into a book for a general audience. Because what the Wheel of the Year means to your coven as you are working in an initiatory context is going to be different than what it means to people who do not belong to your tradition, to people who do not have the same relationship with your gods that your coven has, who do not, participate in the same ritual structure. Like, there are so many things that you just can't take outside of a ritual context. And unfortunately, it's very difficult for me to give examples here, because there are things that can't be taken outside of an initiatory context. But I think, like, the thing that I'm trying to drive at is people will often pick up a Paganism 101 book and look at the Wheel of the Year and go, like, gosh, this feels really cookie cutter, this feels really rigid, this doesn't feel, like, authentic. And yeah, there's a reason for that. And the reason for that is that the version of the Wheel of the Year you read in a book is cookie cutter and is rigid and is inauthentic. And that's because that's not the version that the Wheel of the Year is in the context in which it emerged, right? In the context in which the Wheel of the Year emerged, there is a layer of specificity and depth and creativity to the Wheel of the Year that just doesn't translate to a book for people outside of that context. And I'm really not trying to be like shitty and gatekeepy here and like, oh, you can't understand the Wheel of the Year if you're not a Gardnerian. That's not at all what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is that the Wheel of the Year was designed for a particular kind of practice. It was designed for initiatory, coven-based practice in a Wiccan priesthood, where the Wheel of the Year was a set of seasonal festivals that would allow the members of that priesthood in a coven to connect with their gods and the myths associated with their gods in a particular way. And when you pull the Wheel of the Year out of that context, it loses a lot of its life. So, of course, it's going to feel flatter if you're just reading about it in a book. And, of course, when you're writing about the Wheel of the Year in a book, you're going to pull from sort of examples of folklore that are not initiatory, that are not specific to that Wiccan context. And that's going to make the Wheel of the Year feel a little bit more generic. So that's kind of the first big point that I want to make about the Wheel of the Year. The second big point that I want to make about the Wheel of the Year is that it is not a set of 8 rituals or a holiday, right? It's not a set of 8 separate things. And this is a thing that I think a lot of books get wrong. There is this habit of treating the Wheel of the Year as just 8 totally distinct and isolated rituals that you're supposed to do on a particular date for reasons that no one has really properly explained. And so, like, when October 31st rolls around, you're supposed to, whatever, stick a skull on the altar and light a jack-o'-lantern and then, pour out some offerings to your dead, or whatever, right? And then when December 21st rolls around, you're supposed to have a tree in your home and, I don't know, do some, like, solar whatever to make the sun come back. And it feels very isolated, compartmentalized. That's the word I'm looking for. It feels very compartmentalized, the way that a lot of books talk about it. That's not the point. The point of the Wheel of the Year is that it is one ritual. It is one ritual without beginning and without end. And each holiday on that wheel is just a continuation of that same ritual. The Wheel of the Year is a ritual where every 6 weeks or so, we stop and we check in with the land, and we see what the land is doing. And that's going to be different depending on where you are, right? So, like, Yule in close to the equator, Yule in Panama is going to be very different than Yule in Norway. just because the Earth is doing different things. The seasons pass differently. But the point of the Wheel of the Year is not to prescribe this is what should be happening at this point in time in wherever you are. The point is, okay, we're going to take this point of time and stop and listen to the Earth. See how the Earth has changed since the last time we did this. See how the seasons are cycling and how they're moving. The point of the Wheel of the Year is to stop and tune yourself into the Earth, not to prescribe a particular set of like, this is what the season should look like, and this is what you should do with that season. The point is, we're conducting a single ritual, and that ritual is observing and hallowing the change of the Earth continually throughout cyclical time. And every time you conduct a Sabbat ritual, you're not just doing that ritual, right? So we have let's call it Halloween, because I don't like the word Samhain. We have Halloween coming up this month. When you do Halloween, you're not just doing Halloween. You're doing Halloween, but it is also a continuation of the fall equinox ritual that you did back in September. And it is an anticipation of the winter solstice ritual that you are about to do. The Halloween that you do this year is an echo of the Halloween that you did last year. And it looks forward to the Halloween that you're going to do again next year. And Halloween looks across the Wheel of the Year at May Eve. So when you do Halloween, you're not just doing Halloween. You're doing Halloween, you're doing the fall equinox, you're doing the winter solstice, you're doing Halloween last year, you're doing Halloween next year, and you're doing May Eve. There are 6 rituals contained in that one Sabbat. And anytime you do a Sabbat, you are touching all of those. The point of the Wheel of the Year is that it puts you in connection with the whole of cyclical time. And it is just a constant, it's this eternal return, right? It's this constant stopping and checking in and being at a moment in time and feeling how that moment in time connects to the time before and the time after and the time across and so on. And it is allowing yourself to experience the extraordinary interconnection of the seasons. And the way that we do that in the Eightfold Wheel of the Year is by regularly stopping, checking in with the Earth, seeing what the Earth is doing, building ritual around what the Earth is actually doing, right? If you live in a place where it doesn't, like if you live close to the equator and it doesn't get particularly dark around the winter solstice, and like you don't get snow, then don't write a winter solstice ritual that talks about, now is a dark and snowy time. You're gonna talk about what the Earth is doing where you are. But the point is that we're conducting a ritual, a single ritual, that goes back to the beginning of time and that's going to last long after we are able to be the ones to conduct it. And in this ritual, we are just constantly throwing ourselves into the presence of sacred time. And that's a thing I think a lot of books about the Wheel of the Year, a lot of discourse about the Wheel of the Year just misses. There are a couple of books that do a really good job. So Rebecca Beatty has an excellent book on the Wheel of the Year. I think it's called The Wheel of the Year. It's somewhere up on my bookshelf there. Anyways, Rebecca Beatty has a good book about the Wheel of the Year. I'll put a link in the description below. Jane Meredith has a couple of really excellent books about working the Wheel of the Year and working it as a single thing and as a cycle. So I'll link her books below as well. Jason Menke has a book on the Wheel of the Year. So like there are books that do this, but I think a lot of what people initially see when they talk about the Wheel of the Year, it just leaves a lot to be desired, because people see this like compartmentalized cookie cutter, like at Imbolc you have to make breeds crosses, and at Beltane you have to have a maypole, and it feels alienated. And that's not the point of the Wheel of the Year. The point of the Wheel of the Year really is, again, it emerges in a specific initiatory context, and there is a layer of it that makes more sense in an initiatory context. But even aside from that, the point of the Wheel of the Year is that you are conducting a single ritual that cycles through all of time, and it constantly returns to itself. And it is putting you in connection not just with the time where you are right now, but with all of the points in time that are connected to that. And that's a really difficult thing to get across in a book or in a blog post. And I think that that gets lost in a lot of discourse about the Wheel of the Year. So, now, all of that is not to say that everyone has to be observing the Wheel of the Year, right? Your magical practice is your magical practice, and you should, like, do the magic and the ritual and worship or whatever. Like, you should do the things that feel authentic to you and that feel like they're putting you in connection in the way that you want to be connected. But I think there is this habit that people sometimes have of, even if the Wheel of the Year is not for them, which is totally legit, doesn't have to be for you, do your thing. But I think there's this habit that people have of approaching the Wheel of the Year as if it is kind of silly and nonsensical, and that no one who really understands the seasons, or no one who's like a real witch, or who is creative enough to like do their own thing, would ever just stick to the Wheel of the Year. There's a lot of really good stuff in the Wheel of the Year. It's just not accessible. So, anyways, that's where I'm going to finish off here. This was a ramble. Thanks for listening. I'll talk to you sometime soon. Bye.